What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video this week. We are talking, of course, about episode 2 of Benny on the Beat. Yep, that's still the best I can come up with. I hate the beat. I hate the stupid cop face. Nani? Whatever, moving on. Of course, the first episode of Benny on the Beat was last week. It was our very first virtual ride-along / patrol vlog. I told you guys we'd see what the reception is like, what the comments and feedback were like to decide whether we make this a regular thing. So far, so good. Everybody seemed to really enjoy it. I know there were some comments about preferring if I could have actual footage or clips from my job, which I know, obviously, guys, I know if I could take a camera to work and it wasn't an issue and I could record my actual calls and bring you guys with me, that would definitely be preferable, but as explained in the previous video, there's reasons why we can't do that. But scrolling through the comments, everybody seemed to really enjoy it. So you know what? For now, we're gonna plan on doing this regularly. I am going to make a goal of putting these out once a week on Saturdays. I hesitate to give you guys a set day because my life and my schedule is so insane sometimes, and family comes first. Sometimes it makes it so I can't upload when I think I'm going to upload. Let's just say as a goal, I will try my hardest to make it a regular thing on Saturdays that we upload a patrol vlog recapping one of my shifts from the previous week. I also said we would take a moment at the beginning of this week's video and review a couple comments from last week, answer a couple questions, and then get into this week's patrol video. If you want to skip all that and just get right to this week's video, I'll put the timestamp somewhere down here below of where that begins. But come on, if you want to skip that, you're lame. But if you skipped it, you already skipped it and you didn't see that I called you lame. So if you want to see if I call you any other names or make fun of you further, you might as well stick around and just make sure that I don't.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so comment. Carstorm85 says, I have only one complaint about this series. It's only once per week. Upper echelon. Thank you very much. The box, very fine narrative. If you can maintain freshness, this format may be a winner. Of course, we are fans of freshness on the FuzzFam channel. I will try my best to maintain the freshest of freshness. Excuse me. Aviator Dylan gave some good feedback. One thing I'd like to request is talk about what your procedures are on certain things, like how you fill out police reports, how you call into dispatch about certain things, what you do on traffic stops. Aviator, I love it. I love it. I know that you guys want some of those insights about the specifics and the fine point details. I will do my best to integrate some of those. Tyler Zile asked, do you prefer night shift or day shift? You know what? I prefer the hours of day shift, but I actually kind of like the work and the type of calls we get on night shift better. Colin says, yeah, I like these. How do you all feel about shoplifting calls when loss prevention already has the subjects detained? How much paperwork is there to do on those calls? Funny you should ask, Colin. We're actually going to talk about a shoplifting call today. And on that note, let's actually get into the video.
So hold on tight. The action starts now.
So this shift was one of the busiest that I've had in months. I believe this was a Tuesday when we had this shift, but it was non-stop from the start all the way to the end. I don't know that I'm going to go over every single call. Some of them there's really nothing to talk about, but I'm going to hit the highlights. So last week we went over my procedures coming into work, going into lineup, going out and inspecting my equipment, making sure my car is ready, signing on with dispatch, logging into the computer. I'm not going to go over all that again. If you want to see that, go watch last week's video. So once I was signed on, available for calls, the very first call we got was a report of a drunk guy wandering in traffic on one of our main streets, nearly getting hit by several cars. And while we're on our way to the call, we get calls from other people saying that they were getting into fights with the guy, or he was getting in fights with them. There were like 4 guys that he was trying to fight with. And at this point, we're getting multiple calls on this guy. Now, a lot of calls that we get, if we get one single call and it's like a big deal, like a guy wandering through traffic naked with a knife, and we only get one call, we kind of speculate as we're en route to it whether or not it's legitimate, because you would think more people would be calling on that type of stuff, right? So anytime our dispatchers tell us we're receiving multiple calls, you begin to know this is legit. Whatever they're saying is going on is definitely going down, because lots of people are calling. We had some comments from the last video asking for me to specify some of the details of how I respond, like code 1, 2, 3, or 4, basically talking about whether we go lights or siren or just drive regular speeds. I can tell you guys in the department I work, we don't use our lights and siren for just about anything. Every department's going to be different. I know agencies, and I've even worked for some, where we turn lights and siren on to go to just about everything. 1 of 53 from dispatch. Copy a traffic hazard. Reported pizza box in the road causing problems. Copy that, dispatch. I'll be responding. Lights and siren code 3 forthwith. No, we don't go code. We don't use lights and siren for just about anything. And yes, I did just use a horse as a microphone. That's just how I roll. So one of my partners actually arrives first, finds the guy, and safely, without incident, gets him into custody. I arrive and start talking to him. He is definitely intoxicated.
I'm not drunk. Wait, I am drunk.
So when it comes to intoxicated people or drunks, we have a lot of those we deal with all the time. So we've got some resources being in a city environment that some agencies may not have. There's a couple things we can do. If they're really cooperative and not being a problem or any other kind of crime involved, we've got a detox center that's separate from our jail, where if they have beds and room available, we can take people there, or they can even come out and pick them up and give them a place to just sober up and sleep it off and then let them go once they're done. So in this instance, they didn't have any beds available at this detox center, so I ended up having to take the guy to jail. Booking arresting him on 1 count of public intoxication. All right, and on to the shoplifting call I mentioned earlier. This was a store I'd never been to before. It was like a real feng shui, incense burning, bonsai tree store, which is super cool because I'd actually like to get a bonsai tree to put on my bookshelves back here. Might have to go back and shop there later. But this was a younger kid. It was a girl that was caught shoplifting. Basically, she was seen by an employee taking a bunch of stuff and shoving it in her coat pocket. They stopped her while she was still in the store and asked her about it, confronted her. She gave something back and said that was all she had, and they ended up finding like 4 other things in her pocket. Her basic defense was she intended to pay for it and she hadn't left the store, so it wasn't stealing. I don't know about other states because I've never looked, but in our state, it's called willful concealment. If you're in a store and you shove stuff in your purse, in your pants, in your pockets, it's automatically retail theft. I think most people know it's common sense. You don't hide crap in your pants or in your clothes that you intend to buy. You do that when you're intending to steal. We explained all that to her, and the store ultimately is the one that decides whether they want to press charges or not, which they did. So we got a hold of her parents. They came down to pick her up. And for those of you out there that are cops that do this job, you'll know what I mean when I say that when the parents showed up, it kind of all made sense. These are misdemeanors that we release people on citation, or in the case of a juvenile, we give them a juvenile summons. Pretty much the same as a ticket. It just means the juvenile court is going to send them information in the mail on a date and time that they need to come and appear in court. All right, very next call we had was a domestic disturbance. Unfortunately, a very, very common call that we go on all the time. Any kind of a disturbance between people that live in a home together, or couples fighting, married people fighting. So this one was in like a duplex area, and it was just a report of a man and a woman fighting verbally, like arguing for hours on end. People in the complex have been hearing it all day long, and they, I guess, finally had enough. So we got there, and as soon as we entered the main lobby where all the apartment doors are, we could instantly hear fighting going on from the unit that we were headed to. So on these type of calls, I like to go and just for a moment, just sit and listen. If we can hear violence, if we can hear threats of a weapon, if it's just verbal, rather than just pounding on the door as soon as we walk in and not knowing what we're getting into. But we couldn't hear anything physical going on. So after a few moments, we knocked on the door. They answered the door. You could tell they were flustered and not happy that we were there. Believe it or not, most people usually aren't too happy to see us when they open the door. Then we want to talk to each of them individually, not together. We want to separate them and get both sides of the story as to what's going on. So as we start talking to the people involved on these type of calls, there's a few things that we're after. First of all, we're trying to determine if they are actually what we call cohabitants. That's what's going to make the difference between whether this is a domestic violence thing or it's just people not getting along. Cohabitants are people that are married, if you're related by blood, if you've ever lived together. But after we determine whether or not they're cohabitants, we're then trying to figure out, was any crime committed? Was anything physical? Did anybody get hurt? Was any property damaged? Anything broken during the fight? In this case, they were cohabitants. They had a kid together who was there, beautiful little girl. The fight was over something stupid. I don't even remember what it was. So it didn't appear there was actually a violation of law, except for the disturbance they were causing to the other people in the building. Not really the biggest issue on the table or something we try to push. Our main concerns are if anything got physical, if anyone was hurt, or if anybody's still in danger. These guys were actually really, really cool. They felt bad that we were called. They knew, I think, that it was coming because they kept going on and on for so long. When I went out to talk to him to get his side of the story, he was new to Utah. Turns out he had just moved here from Atlanta.
I got broads in Atlanta.
That will be quite enough of that.
So the very next call we had actually ended up being another domestic, but we didn't know it at first. It came in as a 911 hang-up. So we got to this one and it was a dead-end street. We walked down the street and there's a street light at the end, kind of a creepy, shady-looking neighborhood, and there's a guy out smoking. We approached and talked to him and asked if he called 911 or if he knew if there was something going on in the area. And he gave us this look like, yeah, there is, but I don't talk to the cops. He pointed down the driveway and said there's a house down there, maybe something's going on. Kind of like he was afraid of, you know, snitching or whatever, or getting involved in his neighbor's business, but at the same time didn't want to deal with us continuing to sit there and talk to him, so he told us to go down the driveway. So we walked down the driveway and there's an apartment on the side of the house we wouldn't have even known is there. Knock on the door. It's a Spanish-speaking family. I don't speak Spanish, so I had a hard time communicating, but they had one kid that was able to translate. Kind of like the call we just came from. There was no crime committed, nothing physical, so we just made sure everybody was going to be okay, and then we left. Next call I had, I was sent as a backing officer, finally. So far, everything had been my call so far today, but this one was a back. We got a report of a gal at one of the banks in a grocery store that was trying to pass a bad check. As often is the case, by the time we got there, they had gotten spooked and she had taken off. So the officer assigned to the call would stick around, take a look at video, give them a case number, anything else they need to do. As a backing officer, I cleared off of that and was on to my next call. So this next one, I was actually sent as a backing officer as well. This was a person refusing to leave at a Burger King. So I got there right after the primary officer. She was already in talking to the suspect. When I came in, he was kind of giving her a little bit of a hard time, a little bit of back talk, running his mouth a little bit. Apparently, he'd just been sleeping in the restaurant and the managers no longer wanted him there. And the next call I had was an Asian agency assist. So this was a police department elsewhere in our state looking for a suspect on a crime, and they had reason to believe he was at a house in our city. They gave me the license plate and description of the car he was supposed to be driving and the address where they thought he was. So when I rolled over there, sure enough, the car was there. So I waited for a backup officer, and then we went to the address that they gave us to check to see if the suspect was there. Problem was, the address was no good. There was no address that they gave us. So we just went and did a little bit of door knocking and started asking for this person, or if anybody knew the owner of the BMW, to no avail. Nobody knew him. Nobody recognized the car. Had to call the officer back and tell him he's obviously in the area somewhere, but we've checked every house. We don't know where he's at. Then we had what was probably the call of the day. This one I actually didn't go to because I was tied up on that assist for the other agency looking for the guy with the car. But at the same time that was going on, one of the guys on our crew made a traffic stop on a guy for a registration issue. So he sees the violation, turns on his lights, pulls the car over, gets on the radio, tells our dispatcher the license plate of the car and where he's stopping at. He approaches, contacts the driver, gets some identification from him, tells him why he stopped him. Registration's like way expired, it's revoked, or something. It's some big issue with the registration. So this ended up being one of those where they were going to impound the car. I think it had no insurance and revoked registration, a whole bunch of stuff. So while I was on that other call, all of a sudden on the radio, I heard officers come on pretty hyped up saying they were hearing shots fired, possibly at them. Sounded like it was coming just from like the southeast of where they were. And there was some confusion on the radio right away as to whether or not they were like taking rounds, they were being shot at, or they were hearing a shot somewhere else. And then there was traffic about the person in the car having blood on them and possibly them being shot. So it was really, really confusing on the radio as to what was going on. What happened is the guy in the car decided it was not cool that his car was being towed. He'd had enough. He reached a breaking point. He had a gun with him, took out the gun, and started shooting himself. And I guess because of the windows being up on the car and the fact that there was a building right next to him, the sounds of the gunshot were bouncing off of the building, and it made it sound like they were coming from somewhere else. They ended up going up and securing the gun, getting him out of the car, started administering first aid right off the bat. The guy was conscious and alert and everything when the ambulance got there. They loaded him up and rushed him off to the hospital. I never heard what happened to him. It sounded like he was going to be okay, though. It was a good reminder for me and for cops anywhere when you're on traffic stops or any kind of call. You never know what's going to happen. You never know who has a gun. There's no way to anticipate what happens next other than just being aware of your surroundings, looking for danger signs, and just doing the best you can to stay safe. So those are the highlights on the calls I had on this shift. I had others, but in between all of these, I was doing reports on almost every call I went on. I think there were some comments asking for details on like the length of time on calls and how I do the reports and stuff. I'm not sure how I'm going to integrate that without making the videos super long or super boring. This was a busy, busy day. Like I said, we were busy a lot of times, but it's not usually so busy as this shift was. But that's how this job is. You'll have shifts and days where absolutely nothing happens. You're bored out of your mind. Then you'll have days where dispatch is holding 10 to 20 calls that you can't even get to them all because it's so busy. And that's some of the variety in this job that makes it interesting. You never know what kind of day you're going to have. All right, guys, that's the end of this week's episode. I hope you got a little more insight again into what we do on the job and what a day in the life of a police officer is like. Obviously, this week we took a little more time on some of these calls to explain those details you guys were asking about before. Hopefully it wasn't too much detail, but anyway, just give me some feedback and let me know. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Thank you for being subscribed to the channel. We look forward to seeing you guys throughout the week and by next Saturday, hopefully, for the next patrol vlog. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Let's level up. Pedal to the metal when I play the cut. Doing double time like double dutch. Stay a dime a dozen, so I double up. These late nights finna pay off. Gonna take flight, no days off. My blood pumping, my blade sharp. Young Savon trying to save all.
How you doing, baby?